The Galactic Conclave had seen many things in its 11,000-year history. It had witnessed the birth of stars. It had cataloged the extinction of 43 sentient species. It had brokered peace between civilizations so ancient that their wars had become mythology before humans had even learned to chip flint. The Conclave had, in short, seen everything worth seeing. Or so its members believed. Right up until the moment a human woman named Emma stepped off the shuttle at Graviton Station Keth 7, looked down at the deck plating beneath her boots, and said, quite casually, to the man walking beside her, "John, does the gravity feel a little weak to you?" For a Class 7 station. John consulted the device on his wrist. 0.92 standard. Yeah, they're running light. Emma's tone carried the precise register of a person who had found a minor inconvenience in their hotel room. Not alarm. Not all. Minor inconvenience. The Keth diplomat assigned to receive them, a Varadi elder named SS Sulkavine, whose species had built Graviton Station Keth 7 2,000 years ago and considered it among the greatest engineering achievements in the known galaxy, stood at the arrival threshold with 4 of his ceremonial attendants and heard every word. He had been briefed extensively on humans. All senior conclave officials were, these days. The briefings always stressed the same points. Do not be deceived by their small size. Do not mistake their silence for stupidity. Do not, under any circumstances, allow them to improvise. Nobody had thought to add, do not let them evaluate your infrastructure as though raiding a mid-range hotel. The diplomatic mission had begun 3 standard weeks earlier, when the Conclave's emergency session had reached an impasse. The Deathworld Collective, 6 billion strong, inhabiting a system of 17 worlds, had been moving warships toward the Keth corridor for 8 months. Their stated grievance was territorial. Their actual grievance, as every intelligence analyst in the Conclave knew, was that the Varadi had accidentally redirected a trade current that eliminated 30% of the Dvorak's annual mineral income. The Varadi had done it without malice. The Dvorak did not particularly care. 40,000 ships sat at the edge of the corridor. The Conclave had sent 3 mediation teams. All 3 had returned without agreement, and, in one case, without their shuttle's port thruster array, which had been confiscated as a navigational hazard. It was Ambassador Yeel of the Conclave Secretariat, a Murith, calm to the point of geological, who had finally, reluctantly, filed the paperwork that nobody ever wanted to file. Request for human consultants. Conflict resolution. Category imminent. The paperwork had come back within 48 hours. 2 consultants assigned. Arrival, 3 weeks. Names, John, Emma. Just the names. No titles. No credentials. No species clarification, though by then everyone knew humans had only the one species, which many Conclave members still found slightly unnerving. John and Emma arrived on time. This was the first thing SSS Ulkavine noted. Human consultants, the briefings warned, were either exactly on time or incomprehensibly early. They were never late. The Varadi had always considered punctuality a minor virtue. Meeting John and Emma's flat, steady eyes at the arrival threshold, SS Sulkavine began to reconsider. Diplomat SSS Ulkavine, Emma said, extending her hand. She had done her research. She offered it palm down, the Varadi gesture of non-aggression. Thank you for hosting us. The honor is ours, SS Sulkavine replied, because protocol required it, and because, despite his reservations, he was a diplomat of 11 centuries standing and knew better than to open with doubt. We have prepared full briefing materials. The situation is 40,000 Dvorak warships, 8 months of positioning, mineral income dispute, 3 failed mediations. John had pulled a small tablet from his bag and was scrolling through it as he walked. He had, apparently, been reading on the shuttle. We reviewed the materials en route. Can we meet with the Dvorak fleet commander today? SSS Sulkavine's attendants exchanged glances. The fleet commander, Warlord Grethdal, has refused all direct communication since the second mediation attempt. He destroyed the communication array the 3rd team provided him. That's fine, Emma said. We'll use ours. They used theirs. Warlord Grethdal of the Dvorak Collective had the kind of face that cartographers might use to describe a mountain range. All ridges and deep-set shadows. built by evolution for inspiring fear across a species that communicated primarily through threat display. He had personally overseen the confiscation of the Conclave's shuttle thruster. He had not taken a direct communication from anyone in 6 months. He took Emma's call. Later, SSSL Kavin's attendants would argue about why. The leading theory was simple arithmetic. The humans had called on 17 different frequencies simultaneously, and Grethdal's communications officer had accidentally answered one before realizing what it was. Emma's first words to the warlord of 40,000 warships were, "I understand you've been waiting 8 months. That's a long time to be patient. Your crews must be exhausted." There was a long silence on the channel. "They are prepared," Grethdal said, which in Dvorak signified something between yes and do not test me. "Of course," Emma said. "I'm not questioning their readiness. I'm saying it cost you something to hold them here, and you know it, and I know it, and the Conclave knows it. So let's figure out what actually fixes this." SSSL Kavin, listening from across the room, felt something he had not felt in decades of diplomacy. The distinct sensation of watching someone walk across a frozen lake without checking the ice, and somehow, impossibly, reaching the other side dry. John, meanwhile, had commandeered a secondary conference room and covered 3 of its walls in calculations. He was working on the trade current. The Varadi engineers who had accidentally redirected it had spent 8 months insisting the redirection was necessary for station stability. John had spent 4 hours with their data and found the problem. They had optimized for their own infrastructure without accounting for 3 downstream nodes the Dvorak collectively maintained. The fix was not simple. The fix was, in fact, an 18-month engineering project requiring cooperation from both species and investment from Conclave emergency funds. John presented this to SSSL Kavin on the morning of the 2nd day with a single sheet of summarized figures and the phrase, "The good news is the math works. The harder news is you'll need to actually talk to each other for a year and a half." SSSL Kavin studied the figures. "You derived this in 4 hours. The data was good. I just read it. Our engineers have been working on this problem for 8 months." John looked up from his tablet. His expression was not unkind. It was simply direct in the way that a surgical instrument is direct, not cruel, but also not interested in softening the angle. They were working on how to defend the decision they'd already made. I was working on whether the decision was right. SSSL Kavin was quiet for a long moment. "That is," he said finally, "a significant distinction." "Yeah," John said. "It usually is." The agreement was signed on the 5th day. It was not a perfect agreement. No agreement reached in 5 days across an 8-month armed standoff was going to be perfect. But it was real, specific, funded, with named checkpoints and a joint engineering committee and a conclave arbitrator assigned to mediate disputes during the 18-month implementation window. Warlord Grethdal had insisted on one clause that made the Varadi diplomats flinch. A formal acknowledgement, written into the treaty's preamble, that the trade current redirection had caused material harm. Not an apology, not compensation beyond the restoration project, just an acknowledgement. Emma had gotten that into the text by asking Grethdal, in their 3rd conversation, what he actually needed from this. He had told her. She had written it down. At the departure gate, SSSL Kavin stood with his attendants and watched John and Emma load their bags onto the shuttle. The gravity still ran at 0.92 standard. He had already filed a maintenance order, for reasons he did not fully examine. "A question," he said, before Emma could step onto the ramp. "In my 11 centuries of diplomatic work, I have never seen a mediation resolved in 5 days from a position of this complexity." "How?" Emma considered the question with the same practical attention she seemed to give everything. "We listened to what people were actually saying instead of what they were supposed to be saying. We fixed the math. We didn't assume the war was inevitable just because everyone was already in position for one." "Is that a human approach, specifically?" She smiled, and it was a small, genuine thing. "It's a working approach. We just never got too impressed by the problem to try it." The shuttle ramp sealed behind them. SSSL Kavin stood in the slightly weak gravity of his species' greatest engineering achievement and thought, not for the last time, that the humans had not yet found a problem they were willing to be properly afraid of. He was not sure whether that was terrifying or magnificent. He suspected, after 5 days, that it might simply be both.